What drives you to excel in your area of expertise? I mean, from Iraq to bourbon is a pretty fascinating journey, at least in my opinion.
Well, I've got this desire to share stories, and everything I've ever done has been about telling a story. When I was a soldier, after a stint in the infantry, I was an Army photographer, and a lot of my photography would be used to brief the media. Some of it would be classified and be used in briefings and so forth, but the bulk of it was covering, combat operations and school openings, and it was truly telling the entire story of what we did in Iraq in 2004. And when I got out of Iraq, I wanted to go back and continue telling that story, but no one would take me. I mean, the Associated Press and Gannett, they said, you're too close. You can't go back because you were in the military. And so I was dating this very beautiful woman at the time. She lived in Louisville.
Imagine that.
And I'm told that every man who moves to Louisville is usually, there's a 90% chance they moved here to be with their significant other. And that was what happened to me. And, we got married, and the only job I could get was for this company in Anchorage called Networld Alliance.
Okay.
And it was this trade media company, and they had this restaurant. They had this restaurant arm of the company, and they wanted me to manage the food trade and the restaurant trade magazine.
Okay.
And I was covering things like Panera Bread, Starbucks, McDonald's. I mean, all this stuff from a business perspective.
Now, were you traveling, or was this local?
I would travel. It was a national publication, and I would travel to conferences and everything. But it was about the business side of it.
Okay.
And one of the trends that was coming up in that time was alcohol being served in restaurants, and how restaurateurs could capitalize on alcohol being used in their restaurants. And I started writing about alcohol then, 2005. And I had always been a bourbon fan.
Okay.
Always. And you could say that I may have had some bourbon prior to the legal age of consumption.
Well, I had hot toddies, so because I grew up in.
You grew up in Kentucky, so naturally you're born and it's put on your gums.
Right, exactly.
Back in those days. But when my very first legal drink was Jim Beam White.
Oh wow.
And so bourbon's been a part of my life for a very long time. And so when I was in that job, I was working with freelancers, and I would talk to them about how much money they made in comparison to me. And I was like, I got to go out on my own as a freelancer. This was pre-market crash and everything. So it looked like a good bet to go out on my own as a freelancer. And one of the things I wanted to do was write about wine and spirits, specifically bourbon. And so the very first story I would write would be in 2006, it'd be published 2007. And I was on a path to tell the story of good food and drink. And after time, I peeled away, the food side. I peeled away the wine side. Although in 2012, I was nominated for the International Wine Writer of the Year, went to London and was up for that award in the emerging category. And it was when I was in this room with all these legendary wine people like Jancis Robinson and people from the Mondavi family, and all I could think about was bourbon people. I just wanted to be back in Kentucky sipping bourbon with bourbon people while I'm in a room of the greatest wine people in the world. Wow. And so that was a defining moment for me. But what I do in my work is I'm always trying to tell a story, whether it's the whiskey you're sipping or it's the story behind the whiskey.